What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another modern video. And finally, I have a new deck to show off that looks like a lot of fun, and a friend of mine has played and had a lot of success with it. Actually, I believe won a tournament with this style of deck, and I think it's really cool. And I really wanted to show it off, and it's been a while since we've gotten to look at strictly like a modern deck and have like a proper modern deck tech on this channel. So think why not before hopefully changes get made that we get to check out this deck and kind of see what the heck is going on with it and just kind of the absurdity of what this deck is able to do. But before we get into that, of course, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more content like this or Pioneer content, I do a lot of Modern Pioneer and other essay type videos. Of course, consider subscribing to the channel, ring the notification bell, and of course like the video to show me support. It's free, easy to do, takes like 2 seconds, and makes me very happy. On top of that, too, there's a link in the description to my Discord server. Feel free to join over there by clicking the link and joining. So, Cascade Beanstalk, you've probably already heard it by now, and it's already been like a thing that people have been doing, and we'll get into like the semantics and stuff like that here in a second. But this card, Up the Beanstalk, that came from Wild's Veldrain, when it enters the battlefield, or whenever you cast a spell with a mana value 5 or greater, draw a card. So you're getting to play like essentially this like elemental package of like Fury, Solitude, and Elder Deep Fiend in this case, and even like to a point like Lorien Revealed and Leyline Binding. All these things that aside from Lorien Revealed, you get to cheap on like the price. So we know Fury, Solitude, you pitch a white card or a red card respectively, you get to cast a card. Elder Deep Fiend, you get to sacrifice something, and then the difference in the mana value is what you pay. So if you have like a Solitude, you could, in theory, with this Elder Deep Fiend, you could flash in a Solitude to like get rid of a creature and then sacrifice it with its evoke trigger on the stack to cast an Elder Deep Fiend, and you essentially get to get a trigger from Up the Beanstalk for casting the Solitude and another trigger from the Elder Deep Fiend casting it because its technical mana value is 8, even though you're paying like 2 blue mana to cast it. And then, of course, you get to tap for permanents that your opponent controls for 5/6 body, which is like huge. So essentially, this is what this deck is. The Cascade part of the Beanstalk deck comes from playing Shardless Agent and Bloodbraid Elf. As you probably noticed, that there is no other cards that cost less than 3. You have Up the Beanstalk. Of course, you have Fire Ice here, which technically, like, either side is 2 mana, but the collective mana value of the card is 4. So you actually won't hit it when you Cascade with Bloodbraid Elf or Shardless Agent. Essentially, you play Shardless Agent, you're always going to hit Up the Beanstalk. You play a Bloodbraid Elf, you're going to hit a Shardless Agent, which is going to hit an Up the Beanstalk, or you're going to hit an Up the Beanstalk and continue to get card advantage. And of course, as we've seen from decks previous like this, when we had Yorion legal in the format, and even like some of the 60 card versions, like after Yorion got banned, you would see them try to get card advantage or get back that card that they use to pitch to like the Fury or Solitude or even like the subtleties and things like that by playing a card like Risen Reef, which would allow you to look at the top card and then either put it into your hand, or if it's a land, put it into play tapped, and kind of offset some of the card disadvantage that these 2-for-1s give you by getting to evoke these creatures. Except Up the Beanstalk is a lot harder to interact with than the Risen Reef being an enchantment. Of course, there is interaction for enchantments, sure, but you can't lightning bolt an Up the Beanstalk. You can't unholy heat it. You can't things like that. So it's a little bit harder to kill, costs less, so you're able to play like this Cascade package and be able to hit Up the Beanstalk with a lot of consistency. Essentially playing 4, 8, 11 copies of the card in your deck. So you get to play Fury, Solitude, Elder Deep Fiend. Getting to be fairly disruptive. You're hating super hard on the creature matchups. With Fury and Solitude to a point. Even against scams, I think Solitude is one of the best cards to have because you can just play this like, and then it doesn't matter if they have a grief spell or whatever, a return to the battlefield spell. They just get their card solituded without any issues, and you again lose like another card, but it's better than getting hit for 4 for 5 straight turns and losing while really getting to play a game of Magic. So yeah, you have all these cards that kind of cheap on the cost. You know, you have Lorien Revealed to kind of cycle through and get some of your like important lands. You can get like your islands and stuff like Breeding Pool. You have Roger and Triome, which also gets hit by the card that is not in this deck list because there's another one. So you have Lorien Revealed, which is going to help you hit land drops. You know, obviously getting up to 2 mana is important. Once you get multiple Beanstalks in play, you just like evoke a Solitude and a Fury. You actually get to draw cards from it, which is crazy. Of course, you have an Omnath Locust Creation. The card I've been skipping over quite a bit in this, just because like nowadays, like Omnath is just the quintessential like 4 mana 4/4 that like essentially all these like 4 and 5 color control decks play that just does a lot of things. You know, it's a wall of text. It's it's pretty big at a 4/4, and getting to replace itself, which is kind of the name of the game with this deck, and of course, like a bunch of abilities that let you kind of like skip on the high cost of some of these other cards, where if you just play a fetch land, Omnath is going to be able to cast a Fury or a Solitude, and you're going to draw 1 or 2 cards on top of getting to keep around the 3/3 or the 3/2 respectively. You have in the sideboard, you have Endurances, Force of Negations, Force of Vigors, Leyline of Sanctity, Supreme Verdict, Obsidian Charmaw. A little unfortunate, I think, that the sideboard in particular, I mean, all good cards, all cards that you want, don't necessarily trigger up the Beanstalk besides like the Obsidian Charmaw, but which it can be really good against like Tron, just being able to outpace the amount of answers that they play by just continuing to draw like 10, 15 cards a turn. But the sideboard, you know, is very good for the format. Like endurance against like the graveyard decks. Sure, like you can technically get a grief or a fury with an endurance. With the trigger from the not dead after all on the stack or something like that. You can endurance to shuffle it away, and then your opponent does not get the grief back. Of course, people still play graveyard decks. Dredge and the Living End decks maybe aren't super popular right now, but they still exist. Yawgmoth, this has a little bit of utility against them by getting rid of like their undying creatures, or getting rid of a card from like their graveyard if they try to target with Agatha's Cauldron. Endurance can kind of mess with them that way. Force negation, of course, against like the other opposing like Cascade decks, like specifically like Rhinos and that. You have Force of Vigor against like Hammer, which is a deck that also probably is like more on the least unpopular side, just because there is a lot of like Fury and Solitude and stuff running around, and getting Grief still kind of sucks, even though I think it has probably a semi decent matchup, just because all of its cards suck. So the Grief deck doesn't have a lot of like good cards to take, but nonetheless, you have Force of Vigor here. You have Leyline of Sanctity to kind of combat some of the Grief shenanigans and stuff that you see, or just really any of the other decks that try to be disruptive towards your combo. You have Supreme Verdict, which is an uncounterable wrath, and that art is super beautiful. I've actually never even seen that card art before. And of course, the Charmaw, like Tron, just a big threat that can end up winning the game super quickly from your opponent just deciding to play Tron lands and stuff. So, yeah, that is the Cascade Beanstalk, 4 or 5 color Cascade, so on and so forth. Super cool deck. Just interesting, like what people come up with. I believe that this was like a spike brew, which is probably a surprise to nobody. The fact that this usually when you see Shardless Agent, you're cascading into like Rhinos or you're cascading into Living End, and this deck has just decided that that is not the case. Does not have to be that way. We don't need Violent Outburst. We can play Bloodbraid Elf, and kind of have a semi-aggressive game plan where you can go Bloodbraid into Shardless Agent into Beanstalk, and then just kind of go crazy with some of these other cards, and you're just gonna end up getting so much card advantage. Eventually, you're gonna have all these Beanstalks in play, and then you're going to just end up drawing 3, 4 cards from hard casting or even pitch casting these cards, and end up actually up on cards doing it while having all your mana to eventually possibly Elder Deep Fiend and things like that. So that's gonna do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below if there's any decks that you want to see in the modern format, Pioneer, whatnot. Feel free to leave it in the comments section, or if you join the Discord server, message me on Discord as well. In in the server or whatever. And feel free to share some ideas with me. I would appreciate looking at like any sort of deck list. It's a lot of fun, and I hope we get some bannings really soon so Modern can be cool again. So that's gonna do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one.